Hey everyone, it's Ryan from No Credentials Required to talk to you about one of our newest partners at Belly Up Sports, SeatGeek. Yeah, live sports is great on television, but the feeling of being at the arena is a priceless experience. That's why our friends at SeatGeek are there to help you find the best tickets at the best prices. Not only can you get tickets to sporting events, we can also get tickets to concerts, comedy shows, musicals, and more. Search for your desired event now at SeatGeek.com, enter promo code BellyUpSports at checkout, and you save $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek. Life's an event. We have the tickets.
There is a final, and it is Chelsea versus Real Betis. I mean, this is honestly, everyone knows who I'm rooting for. but
Yeah.
But yeah, Chelsea finished first on the top of the table. Obviously, went undefeated in the league stage. You can kind of say maybe continue that undefeated. Obviously, they technically did lose one game, and that was again in the leg against Liga Warsaw, but still. But their pathway, I think you would say probably in Chelsea's of a team like Chelsea, you would probably say a very much winnable pathway when they go up against teams like Copenhagen, Legia Warsaw, and Djurgården. Now, I'm not saying that these teams did what they needed to do to get far. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but they did get blown out by Chelsea. So that did happen. So
Yeah, there's no getting around that. That was a beatdown. Don't get me wrong, we've seen 7-1 beatdowns before from top teams, but that was still an unfair beatdown.
But yeah, so Chelsea, I think out and out heavy favorite, right? I think have been first this whole time. And I don't think anybody, and I think since starting into the knockout round was viewed as the heavy favorite to win this thing, and playing like the team that is probably the heavy favorite should be playing. Now you're at the other side. You got Real Betis, and you heard us say all the players that are on Real Betis, very likable players too, by the way, in Real Betis. You're talking about Anthony now kind of having fun again, the quintessential Brazilian play style, right? The free flowing, fun having, not being stressed out by all things, including their own country. Things like that. And he's just having fun. He apparently really if you're having your people talking, trying to get a deal done to stay at Real Betis, it just should tell you how much he loves it being over there when this was just supposed to be a loan.
Yeah.
Obviously, Cucho Hernandez, who left MLS to get another shot in Europe, I think, is another name to follow, especially if you're a big MLS guy. You're probably trying to see him lift a trophy after also having his run of dominance over with the Columbus Crew. If you're a U.S. supporter, Johnny Cardozo's on the team.
Yeah.
What else is there to be said? Isco, probably one of the few players I think no one can hate. I don't think there's as a matter of fact, Edward loved Isco, and as a matter of fact, funny enough, we did a belly up bonus round of players that we like that everyone hates, even though Isco is not on that list. But Edward having to see this guy every day again, when he had to play against Barcelona, and still love what he was doing, just should tell you how likable Isco is. Also, Edward's probably not the best example of a fan because Edward has no ill will in his heart.
Yeah,
Great ability. I wish I could have that. I'm not that person. I'm petty.
So. I've literally already made fun of Chelsea, I think 17 times by this point in time already in my short appearance on today's episode. So yeah, that's not possible for me as well.
Yeah, I don't know how Edward does it. Maybe it's being a parent.
It must make you nicer. Sure enough didn't make me nicer.
But yeah, Real Betis. I mean, the name we can keep listing names of players on that team, and then of all people, Pellegrino is the coach. A coach that I honestly wish his time at Real Madrid was a little bit better. I wish he didn't get fired while he was at Man City. He's generally a good coach, and I think you're seeing it, especially with his time at Real Betis. So. I'm glad that I'm also rooting for that for him as well, as aside from me just not wanting to see Chelsea lift the trophy. But yeah, their pathway, they beat Vitória, the Portuguese team, Jagiellonia. I think I pronounced that right. And of course, Fiorentina. I think
at this point in time, we just talked about not being able to pronounce things right. I'm not going to judge anybody for not being able to pronounce some of these teams' names. There are far too many accent marks that I have not practiced before in my life.
So yeah, but I would say probably like a pretty good pathway. You win against a Portuguese team.
Yeah.
Not entirely sure where they're from. The other team is Jagolonian,
I think it's Finland.
Finland. Okay, and then obviously Fiorentina. Probably I would say a good test for them, especially going into this final. But yeah, man, like how do you feel about this matchup? What do you think is if you're Chelsea, who you're trying to keep quiet, and vice versa for Real Betis, who are they trying to keep quiet over there in Chelsea?
Yeah, I think number one, keeping quiet on for if Chelsea is aiming to keep somebody quiet, they're obviously aiming to keep Anthony quiet. A guy who is 2-1-1 against Chelsea in his career, has an assist, does have a yellow card though, by the way, so maybe they can get under his skin. But it's definitely one of those things that you look at as he's the number one, need to stop. There is the alternative path that you go through Isco and slow down Isco, not allowing things to connect, which is a huge play. Is Chelsea that good of a team to be able to do that right now? I don't know. You'd think so, right?
In this tournament, at least.
Yeah, in this tournament they seem to be, but Real Betis is also playing exceptionally well, and not like any team they've played at this point in time up to this point for Chelsea in this league. On the flip side, Real Betis, it's hard to just like pick one dude, but I feel like it's Mudryk. I think he's just the obvious answer at this point because as he goes, that team goes.
Crazy to think that after so many people have called him a bust.
Well, he still could be. I mean, it's so hard to tell. He's what 2 years, I think, into a starting role with Chelsea. And yeah, it's like a situation where he is so hot and cold. You just don't know what you're going to get from him at times. That's what his problem is in the Premier League as well. Is like you don't know what you're going to get time in and time out. Beyond him, I mean, Cole Palmer being the other guy. We all know what Cole Palmer did when he came on the scene, but it almost felt like he's fallen asleep at the wheel, if you will, since then. But at the same time, you never know. He could always pop up at the craziest times. But yeah, I think for me, if you're going to stop anybody in Betis, it's Anthony. If you're going to stop anybody on Chelsea that's really going to potentially drive the team forward, it's Mudryk. But then there's a couple options back behind that. It's just, if you're Betis, it's all hands on deck. Everybody's got to be behind the ball, or at least 9 out of the 10 field players need to be behind the ball, not counting the goalkeeper, obviously, because it's just going to be a very interesting situation. Obviously, there's still Enzo Fernandez, who I don't even talk about normally, but he's always out there. So, yeah, good luck if you're Real Betis. I'm rooting for you at least.
Yeah, I think obviously the payroll of Chelsea versus Real Betis is probably that's a one hell of a ratio. But yeah, man, I think you make a good point. This is gonna be Chelsea's first like real challenge in the knockout rounds.
Yeah.
This is like their first real challenge of because they've had I would say fair to say a very easy pathway. It's literally knocking everybody out, with almost no issues. And you're gonna go against this Real Betis team, a very hungry team, a team that I would say a lot of guys that are looking for that bounce back, right? I mean, you could look at Hector Bellerin's career, Isco, even though Isco, I would say had a good career. It's just the fact that he was always the guy on the bench. He was never the starter for Real Madrid, even though in reality this is the problem when you talk about these big clubs. Same thing for like the teams like Manchester United and Chelsea and all them. You're gonna go get the world's best players, and unfortunately, there's gonna be guys from the world's best players list that someone's gonna have to ride the pony, the pine pony. That's the reality.
Somebody has to be number 12. That's it.
And unfortunately for Isco, his situation around Madrid, I mean, you had to look at Modric,
And before that, he had Ronaldo, Kaká in his early days with Madrid.
When he was playing as a winger, yeah,
Ozil.
So
Benzema was a winger time in and time out. That was when they had Higuain up front.
So Isco, it's not that it just clearly he could start. He's one of those guys that like anywhere else he'd be starting.
He's the David Silva of the new age of Spanish midfielders, is what he is.
Exactly, and I think him getting his opportunity to be a captain, a leader at Real Betis is very showing. It's funny enough, like the only person that it doesn't have like a little bounce back story is Johnny Cardozo. This guy literally was playing in Brazil, and then gets this opportunity to go to Europe. And I think it's what's funny is that he's American but grew up in Brazil,
Yeah.
and yeah, people probably see his name and probably don't correlate American, which I think he's the bright future of as a six for the U.S. men's national team. And I mean, if I'm sorry, Tyler Adams, but you're just not starting over him. That's why I have such a hard time trying to don Tyler Adams the captain of this team, of the U.S. team, because I just don't think you're going to start over Johnny Cardozo at this point. I think Cardozo has finally got ahead of you as far as him performing for the U.S. men's national team. I haven't really got to see him play yet because he just gets hurt right when they're about to call him up.
Oh.
So, but yeah, I think Cardozo, and he's already surpassed Tyler Adams, and it's unfortunate, but
Yeah,
it's a reality.
it is. And there's one other player on Betis that I think is worth a mention is Ezzalzouli, the Moroccan forward.
Mm-hmm.
Guy that we've seen on the World Cup stage as a youngster come out and dominate. Well, maybe not dominate, but he played way better than you would have ever expected for him.
Morocco's run was pretty good.
Yeah, so he was a key feature in that at times, and so it's one of those things where you also there's unsung heroes also within Real Betis. You mentioned Johnny Cardoso, Ezzalzouli is another one. As you just look at like beyond Anthony. Beyond the Iscos, there are other players here. It's not just a squad of two mixed with, 9 so-so fielders, like mid or field players. Like they actually have real players. And I'm not saying other teams that have been in this tournament aren't real players. They are. They would beat me 10 out of 10 times, 100 out of 100 times. I'd be embarrassed crying in any other, but it's still a situation where for Chelsea, they can get beat if they overlook the Real Betis squad. Just because there's not 7 high-quality names on that other side, there are 10 really decent field players that can be a great squad mix on this Chelsea team easily. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough thing for Chelsea to understand is like you have dominated, but you maybe need to check that at the door when you come into this matchup. Because if you don't, we've seen it time and time again, especially in the Conference League and Europa League finals. These Spanish teams love to come in, pop an early goal, and then just shut you out the rest of the game. And it happens time and time. Sevilla was one of the most dominant at doing it. I believe a 3-year run of winning. And then I think it was 5 out of 7 years at one point in time for the Europa League. So yeah, Spanish teams in these tournaments, these European tournaments, I don't really want to say they're outclassed by any means. So it'll be a very interesting play. But yeah, there's a lot of players beyond just Cardoso that is worth talking about.
No, yeah, I think that's a fair point to mention for the clash because I mean, Spain has been probably one of the more dominant leagues that have in these European competitions. I mean, obviously, the trophies that come from Real Madrid and Barcelona, Sevilla's dominance in the Europa League. We still haven't. Obviously, this Europa Conference League is a very young tournament, so you only have had 3 champions. And that being an Italian team, an English team, and a Greek team because remember Olympiacos won it last year. But yeah, I think can we see Spain add another thing to their long list of just trophies of and this is kind of where guys like me, Jose, Edward, who are massive La Liga stands, where we tell people. In reality, in my opinion, still that La Liga is the best league in the world. I understand that the Premier League has a lot of marketability, has I guess more bigger name teams, but when you see these competitions and you see these La Liga sides go far in the final, go into the final and win the whole thing. I mean, Villarreal beat Manchester United. I just want to point that out again. Yes, it took penalties, but still. It still happened. Like these Spanish teams do win, go far in these tournaments and do win these tournaments pretty frequently. And like and I always tell people I get why people like the Premier League more. I don't disagree with it. I totally get it. I get why everyone views it as the best league in the world. And I always start the sentence with I'm biased with La Liga. I'm gonna say La Liga. And I don't know how many people get offended when I do say that. When I give them the heads up, I'm just biased to La Liga. I think that La Liga brings a quality that I don't see it very often in the Premier League. Even though the Premier League has such spectacular moments and such amazing play, it's fast, it's exhilarating, all those things, nitty and gritty and all that. I just like the technical ball from La Liga.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that because I think it's worth mentioning. I said it earlier. There are different the big five leagues in Europe. They play the game differently. Each one plays it a little differently, and on a neutral stage, which is what the Champions League, which is European Cups, is a more neutral stage. It's a more neutrally refereed stage. You get differing opinions from referees, but they're all relatively close to each other. Versus the Premier League allows a lot more physical play. La Liga allows a lot more advantage to the offense. That they'll be quick with the whistle if it's a defensive foul, but if it's like a potentially offensive foul, they're not gonna call a whistle. Serie A is still kind of a mix of that park the bus style and some free flowing play. And it goes across the board. But when it comes to a neutral standpoint, I think La Liga teams are better prepared for that more neutral style of play where they can play nitty gritty, but they are more than happy to spread you out and just pass the ball around you 10 out of 10 times and win with 1-0 in a very interesting style where like the Premier League teams, it's a grinded out situation if they win 1-0. Serie A can also be a grinded out situation for a 1-0 victory. German league, we all know, is a grinding it out situation for that. And then PSG doesn't win 1-0 is the difference for the French league. It's literally just PSG. So that's what makes Spain so different. I don't know if I'd call them the best league, but I think they're the best for a neutral tournament like this. Personally, I am still a Serie A fan, despite all my love of strong athletic sport athletes playing against each other. Like I love the Premier League for that, but I think Serie A to me is that really interesting mix of physical play from Premier League and then the technical play from La Liga that it gives me a little bit more intrigue. I just hate some of the conditions of those stadiums in Serie A. That's the one thing that I hate beyond belief. But you're seeing that in the last couple of years. Italian teams, Spanish teams popping up into finals that are making a name for themselves again after a domination from German teams and from English Premier League teams for so long. So, yeah, I won't go as far as you to say La Liga is the best, but I still agree that there are a lot of good reasons that La Liga has a conversation to be the best league in the world.
Yeah, for sure. But all right, Chelsea, Real Betis. Obviously, everyone knows who I'm going for at this point, but if you guys need me to say it, I am rooting for Real Betis for one reason. Well, two reasons. One, I don't like Chelsea because, unfortunately, I support Arsenal. And then two, I'm a La Liga stan. So, of course, I'm going to be pulling for the La Liga team as long as it's not Barcelona. So, yeah. That's basically where I'm going with. I think Real Betis has a lot of chip on their shoulder. Just in general, chip on their shoulder is probably the best way to sum up Real Betis. I think a lot of these players have so much to prove. It's all the way down to the coach. Have something to prove themselves that they are a quality team, and why not be against one of the biggest clubs? A team that maybe 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, won a Champions League final.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm gonna go with Real Betis. Maybe I'm a little bit biased with it, but I'm picking Real Betis.
I'm also picking Betis. I don't think Chelsea is prepared for what they're about to face. I think they're expecting to come in here and run ruckshot like they had in the last matchup, because it's the only place they've been able to dominate, and they're thinking they're going to continue to dominate that. And I do, from a bias standpoint, I hate seeing Chelsea succeed for any little thing.
Who is that guy?